Gentleman's time has expired from Arizona. The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized for 5 minutes on the amendment, and then we'll have the vote on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So let's talk about that just a little bit more. Evidence, this is not, actually everybody thinks this is going to sound lawyerly, but it's just very straightforward. Evidence is anything that comes within the rules of admissibility that tends to make any matter, any proposition, more probable or less probable, meaning that it has probative force, tends to prove one way or the other. And they have all these rules in evidence about when somebody who's not in court and says something that was said out of court wants to testify about that, when that can be allowed. And here we have what's called, it looks like preliminarily a double hearsay problem. The CHS is not here testifying, and Prigozhin and Zlochevsky, the guys who say they paid a bribe, certainly aren't here. But what this is a situation, let me give you a hypothetical, slightly different situation. Let's assume it's not the confidential human source, or the confidential human source isn't having a conversation with Prigozhin and Zlochevsky, but he's somewhere nearby, and he hears them talking. He eavesdrops on them, and they're talking about having paid bribes to Hunter Biden and Joe Biden of $5 million each. Now, in that situation also, the person in the position of the CHS, the eavesdropper, would not know whether Zlochevsky and Prigozhin are being truthful or not in saying they paid bribes, but that does not mean it is not evidence. It is evidence. And it comes in through the hearsay rules because those people are describing a criminal conspiracy. The statements of a co-conspirator are so-called admissions of a party opponent. They come in through that rule. This is straight up direct evidence of bribery. Now, you can say, if you want to, that you're not persuaded by the direct evidence, the person admitting that they committed a bribe or undertook a bribery scheme, but it's not that it's not evidence. So you could say, well, I think there's evidence, and it's admissible evidence, and a jury would be well-founded deciding on the basis of that evidence to convict for bribery, but I'm not going to do an investigation anyway. I'm not going to support bringing in the witness who is defying the subpoena of the Congress because I'm just not persuaded by that direct evidence of bribery. I understand that would be a contention you can make. But again, even in this age when you talk about, I want you to tell your truth and I'm going to tell my truth, which is abysmal and absurd on its face, I didn't know that we had started changing the definition of evidence. But there is evidence. And even to those people who say, well, it sounds like it's circumstantial evidence and indirect evidence. Well, by the way, lots of people were convicted on circumstantial and indirect evidence. But that's not the case either here. When the bribery conspirator is overheard or is heard saying, I engaged in a bribe with that person, that's direct evidence of bribery. And so, I'm, in terms of credibility, again, I'd love to evaluate the confidential human source. I think the country ought to get the chance to evaluate the confidential human source in this case. It's that important. But if you want to say, and again, what's in the FBI and the United States Attorney have both evaluated him, they tell us, and they say this confidential human source is credible. So if he were in the situation of being an eavesdropper, that means he really did what he says he really heard what he says he heard. So some people won't be satisfied no matter what evidence is offered, and that's clear. But there's lots of evidence. And with that, I'd like to yield to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Van Drew.
I thank the gentleman from